Welcome back. So let's continue with our domain enumeration. Uh, Having enumerated basic information about the domain and the users, let's now move on to listing or enumerating different computer objects in the domain. So if we use get net computer from PowerView or get AD computer from the Active Directory module, we can get to know information about computer objects in the domain. So if I run get net computer here, these are the member machines or computers in this domain, including the DC, the servers, and all the machines from different OUs. If I run get AD computer with a filter of asterisk, then I get a list of all the machines in the current domain. The output is quite similar to what we have using PowerView. Now, there are a couple of things to note here. One is that this output, either from PowerView or the Active Directory module, this just shows the computer objects in the current domain. This does not mean that there must be or there would be an actual machine or a VM behind. For example, let's say this machine name. It is not entirely necessary at all to have an actual or a virtual machine behind this computer object. We can always create, and any domain administrator can create a computer object in the domain which is not a machine, which is not actually a machine, it's just an object. So what we get here by running get net computer or get any computer is just those domain objects which are marked as computer objects, whose object type is computer. Now we can filter out this information in various ways. First of all, what if we would like to have all the properties for each of this computer object? In PowerView, we can use dash full data option, which returns all the non-null properties of this particular machine, of all the machines in this domain. And here, if I run properties asterisk in Active Directory module, we get a list of all the properties of all the computer objects in the domain, right? Now, what if we would like to filter a particular machine, let's say on the operating system? What if we would like to see how many machines in the domain are server 2016 machines? So in case of PowerView, we can use dash operating system and uh, a wildcard match to server 2016. Similarly, in case of get AD computer, we can use a filter where operating system matches server 2016, or it is like server 2016, not matches. And we look for the operating system property. So let's run both of these and see how does the output look like. So here, if I run that, of course, all the machines are server 2016 actually in our domain. Similarly, if I run the Active Directory module command, the output should be exactly the same as we saw earlier, because there are no non-server 2016 machines in this domain. Now, another, please keep in mind before I move ahead, remember how we filtered getnet users output for common name. We can do similar thing for any of these machines, any of these properties, even for the computer machines, right? For example, if you would like to see just the operating system version or operating system of all the machines. So here what we did was to use the operating system option to filter out the machines which are server 2016, but we can always use something like this as well. And filtering it out or showing us only the operating system of all the machines here, right? So feel free, this select is an alias to select object of which is the commandlet of PowerShell. So feel free to filter out based on any of these properties. Now you may like to go for dash ping option, which can be implemented in case of get AD computer or the Active Directory module like this to check if the machines are live or not. Please keep in mind that both of these options, dash ping here and test connection here, both of these use ICMP, that is the ping option, to check if a machine is alive or not. So if ping is filtered out onto the or onto an external firewall or the host firewall of a machine, this may give you a false positive, but it is worth a shot nonetheless, right? So these are the ways how we can enumerate different machines or computers in the domain. Now, once we have the basic information, the user information, the computer information, let's move ahead and start enumerating groups in the current domain. So if I run getNet group, it provides information about the group. Similarly, if I run getAD group, it provides the information about a particular group, right? So let's try this. If I run getNet group here, it provides me a list of all the domain groups. So these are domain groups, not the local groups. This is equivalent of net group / domain, right? These are all the groups in the current domain. Let's quickly do this with the help of uh, Active Directory module as well. So I run filter asterisk. So these are the groups in the domain. Once again, like PowerView, because the object which PowerShell module, Active Directory PowerShell module returns can be filtered out using, for example, select object. If you would like to see just the names, right? If you would like to see an output which looks similar to the PowerView output, you can always use something like this, right? You filtered out only on the name property, right? That's what we did. So this way we list the groups. If we use getnet group / domain, or in fact, I forgot to put it on the slides here. If we use get -net computers -domain, we can extract the information from a trusted domain as well, from a trusting domain as well, right? In case of PowerView, if you would like to extract full information about a group, not just the names of the group, but if you would like to have a look at all the information, for example, group SID and other pieces of information, creation time, etc., you can always use the full data option, which lists all the properties, all the non-null properties of every group in the domain. Of course, we can always specify a group. Let's say we want to check if the domain admin groups exist or not. Of course, it would. It is a built-in group, but this is how you extract information about only one group. In case of the AD module, you can always use the identity parameter to get the exact same result, right? You will like to notice that if we extract all the information, then we get the group membership as well. But both PowerView and the Active Directory module provide a separate command for that. So we will have a look at it that way soon. Another interesting method to look for fruitful or interesting groups is to use a wildcard in the group name. So if I run this getnet group name asterisk admin asterisk, what it returns is all those groups whose name contain the string or keyword admin. We can do the exact same thing with the Active Directory module as well. What we are doing here, get AD group, and in filter in place of asterisk, what we are using is if the name of the group is like, that is, it matches with wildcard, the string admin. So we want, if that is the case, we want to have a look at the name of the group. So let's run this one as well. So the same result. Now, one very interesting group which is missing from this list is It is the enterprise administrators or enterprise admins group. Why it is missing from this place? Because enterprise admins or enterprise any group, for example, this key admins group, which has been introduced in 2016, there is an enterprise counterpart as well called enterprise key admins. These groups are available only on the forest root. The root domain of the forest only will have such groups. So if I run this on the forest root, you will see that there are few more groups here. For example, here is the enterprise admins. So goes for the schema admins group, enterprise admins, and enterprise key admins. These are the groups which are part of only, which are available only on the domain controllers of the forest root, right? So this way we can enumerate groups in a domain. So these all are once again the domain groups. Now, what if you would like to get the or retrieve the membership of the groups? So we can use getNet group member from Power View or getAD group member. Please keep in mind that we are using these two tools just as an example to speed up things. Feel free to use any tool of your choice, uh, whether it be a PowerShell tool or a Python tool or a C# tool or anything else, or even using WMIC queries or associators of in WMI, whatever you feel comfortable with. Please try to focus more on what information we are trying to extract rather than the tools which we are using. Feel free to implement any of the tools of your choice. Okay, so coming back to this, let's run get net group member to let's enumerate the domain admins group, right? That's generally a favorite group for attackers. So if we run this on the getnet group member on the domain admins group, we have two domain administrators, SVC admin and the administrator, the built-in administrator. Now there are a couple of interesting observations to make here. One, uh, this property is this member a group. So what does this mean? This means that this identity SVC admin is a user, it is not a group. You can always have groups which are part of a group, right? So for example, we can have a custom group which is a part of the domain admins group. So please keep that in mind. Another interesting observation here is about the user administrator. If your organization or an organization you target uses the built-in default administrator, this user is the default domain administrator. If they use this particular administrator and rename it, please advise them or please keep in mind that it is useless. Why? Because of this. This, if you remember, is the domain SID which we enumerated. This portion is what is the object identifier or RID in case of domain. This particular information is what makes the object unique in the forest. What does that mean? That means this thing, although can be same in two different domains, in two different domains in two different forests, by default, this is something which is designed to be unique across the globe, right? The size of the string ensures that there would be no duplicate domains, no two domains with same SID, but that is possible in different forests. But this thing, leaving that behind, this RID is what makes an object unique in a forest. So 500, this RID you cannot change for the built-in administrator. So renaming this user is useless. Even if whatever name you give to this user, even if you try to rename it, it would be useless. So that is the membership of the domain admins group. Let's enumerate the enterprise admin group's membership as well. Enterprise admins. No result. Why? Remember that the group is available only on the forest root. So if I add this here, Then we have the membership of the group. Here you can note that, note the difference in this in the domain seed here. Here you can see that there is just one enterprise admin, which is the default built-in domain administrator. Another thing to keep in mind here is the recurse or the recursive option. Recurse in case of Power View, recursive in case of the Active Directory module. What these options do, for example, if this property was true for any of the members of the domain admins, that is, if there was a group which was a part of the administrators group. Let me show you that with an example. So if I run getnet group member on the administrators group here, so what you will see that the administrators group in our domain has 3 members. There is a member called enterprise admins, which is a group. There is another member called domain admins, which is also a group. And then there is the administrator user, which is not a group. So how do we enumerate the membership of these 2 groups, right? One option is to run getnet group member on these these groups repetitively, separately, or we can use the recurse option. If we use the recurse option, what Power View or the Active Directory module do is it shows us that this is the group which is a member of the administrators group, and this user or users are part of that particular group. For example, in our current domain, for the group administrators, domain admin group is a member. Who are the members of the domain admins group? SVC admin and the administrator, right? And if there were even more nesting, we would be able to see that as well. So this is what the recurse or recursive option does. Now, if you would like to get group membership for a user, that is, if you want to enumerate the other way around, what we did with get AD group member or getnet group member was to list the membership of a particular group. What if we would like to see if a group, of which groups a particular user is a member of, right? We can use getnet group or get AD principal group membership from the Active Directory module. Let's have a look at the Active Directory module. So currently, what is the user with which I am running? It is the student admin user. So if I use get AD principal group membership and identity student admin, so the student admin user, or for that matter any of the student users which we have in the lab, are a member of a group called domain users, which makes sense, and another group called the RDP users group, right? The red of the domain users shows that it's a built-in group. This is not a built-in group, right? So this way we can enumerate it the other way around, quite equivalent to reverse lookup, which we are used to see in the DNS, right? The first 2 commands, these list the memberships of the groups. These 2 commands lists if a user is member of which groups, right? Continuing with the enumeration, we can what we did was to list the domain groups. We can also list the local groups on a machine. Please keep in mind that other than the domain controller or domain controllers, we must have administrative privileges on the machine where we run this particular command. So this particular functionality is from Power View. So if I run this particular command, what I will have is a list of local groups on the domain controller. So these are the groups onto the domain controller, right? And if I remove the list groups option here, we get to have the membership of the administrators account onto the administrators group, membership of the administrators group onto the domain controller. Now, there are some more enumeration options which need local admin rights or any other special conditions onto the target machine get logged on, which lists actively logged on users on a computer. Needs you to have local admin rights on the target machine. Get logged on local, which lists locally logged on users on a computer. This needs remote registry and local admin rights on the target machine. Please be aware that remote registry is started by default on the server operating systems. This means that if I run this particular command, it should be possible for me to have a look at which users are logged on locally onto the domain controller. So we can see that the user administrator, the one with RID 500, is logged on locally onto the domain controller. Similarly, if you would like to enumerate the last logged on user on a computer, it also needs administrative rights and remote registry to the target server. So that was all about enumerating users, logon sessions, groups, membership of the groups, which user reverse membership of the groups, etc. Now we can also go for once again, this is from PowerView, find shares on hosts in current domain. What invoke share finder does, it looks for interesting shares readable, that is readable or writable by current user in the domain. So if I run this with verbosity turned on without providing any other option, you can see that there are some default shares which are readable, which are accessible for our current user. It's the remote admin share. That means that it does not mean that our user would necessarily will have privileges to access this particular uh, share, but there is a high chance that we can actually access any of these shares, right? You may like to note that these are the built-in ones which PowerView explicitly allows you to exclude, right? So we have excluded standard, print, and IPC. And now if I run this particular command, we'll get to see only two shares, which once again, although not listed in PowerView, are expected in a domain. NetLogon and sysvol are two shares which are readable by every machine or every user in a domain. Both of these shares are always accessible on the domain controller. This is the place from where machines pull their group policy files. And many times users starter scripts, etc. As well are available on these shares. If we run invoke file finder, it tries to find sensitive files on computers in the domain. If we have read or write privileges on a share, invoke file finder tries to look into interesting files into those shares, files which contain interesting words like a password or username, etc. And if we run getNet file server, what getNet file server does is it looks for a high value target. What is a high value target? A high value target is such a target where uh, a lot of users authenticate to. For example, a domain controller is a high value target. A file server, what GetNet file server does, it looks for those machines which have the file server role installed on them. So there are high chances of multiple users authenticating to a file server. Same goes for an Exchange server or a SharePoint server. Those servers are also considered high value targets in domain, right? So this brings us to our first learning objective. Uh, there are solutions available to these learning objectives. Initially, they are going to be quite easy to do. But if you would like to do them as challenges, please feel free to do so. And that is the reason I'm not covering the solutions in the same video where I introduce the objectives. So feel free to try these as a challenge. If you want a solution, please have a look at the solution videos. So what the learning objective for this enumeration part, we are not done with the enumeration yet. For this enumeration part, the learning objective or objectives are, you need to enumerate following for the $corp domain. It's quite straightforward. Make sure that you use at least PowerView and Active Directory module to solve these. Feel free to use more tools if you want. So we need to enumerate the users, computers, domain administrators, enterprise administrators, and shares in the current domain with the help of whatever tools we want. Uh, if you want using Power View and Active Directory module, or feel free to use any other tool. So this brings this video to an end. In the next video, we will continue with our enumeration part. Thank you very much for watching.